At some point or another, we're all, I believe, going to come across contact with some people who are trying to sell you their religion and sell you their way, their worldview. And a lot of times, this is going to be a high control group. And in this video, I want to just say, make, I think, at least 5 points for what it is that these high control groups tend to look for. And what they do is they're looking for, basically, I would call a victim, a small v victim. And that is usually a person, myself, yourself included. If you weren't raised in it, that's a different story. But you will see that they will look for someone who is in need, you know. You may be going through a period of health crisis or divorce or high stress, loss of a career or job, maybe even going into retirement and the stress of that, and you're looking for something to do with your time. You can come across these high control religious groups. Now, I don't think I'll say too much about my own personal experience, perhaps until the end of this video, but let's just go through a couple of points that you should kind of be aware of. You know, we all know about the people that will show up at our door in suits and sometimes t-shirts, and they usually come in twos, and they want to sell you something, is basically. So we all know that's been said that if you're trying to sell somebody something and they're already halfway there to buying it, it's a much easier sale. If you find somebody that already wants something, it's a much easier sale to get them, to convince them to come along your side. So a lot of the times this group will love bomb you at first. You're going to be so special, and that is part of them trying to get you into their community. And once you're in their community, they're going to want you to assent to their rules, their ways of thinking, and just the way they do things. Because you're going to want to belong, and they're going to want to control. I'm not even talking, well, money comes into it, of course, as well. People do want your money, because every even a religious organization has to have money. So these control groups, these high control groups, will try to find you at a weak point to get you in. Now, something I should say, even though we're already into point one, is that I am not trying to tell you not to go to a religion or to have any spiritual beliefs or whatever. What I'm trying to define here is a difference between, maybe in my mind, it's not a huge difference, but I think it's okay to allow for it. If you're going to a church or a religious group that isn't going to force you to believe a certain way to continue to be a part of that group, then, like, I understand good behavior and all that sort of thing. You don't want people in your group that are going to be, you know, really bad in the sense that they're going to affect others. And yet, we all know the evangelistic types that want to convert you, change you, take you, solve your life problems, whether you're on drugs or alcohol or whatever. And so they will say, you know, be a part of our group and we'll help you change. Well, I guess I'm not saying you shouldn't go to some place like that. But what this whole video is about is to give you a caution for these things. So one, if it requires you to follow these rules before you get any more love, that could be a sign that you're stepping into a control group. Two, if they have a set bunch of doctrines, that is beliefs that arise from their study and interpretation of a scripture, or a spiritual man, a leader, a priest, a shaman, somebody whose only their way can contain truth, you're probably looking at a high control group. Especially if you can't question, if you're not allowed to question any of these doctrines or beliefs, even in conversation, and say, well, I'm not so sure about point 3 of the 5 points you're trying to sell me, of this religious group, then you probably are going to get yourself into a high control group. Number three, when you get in one of these groups, you'll gradually, and it'll happen slowly usually, but anything's up for game these days. You'll start to lose your own individuality and your own agency. It means you're going to have to start to conform to the way they look at the entire world, the way they look at minorities, the way they look at how people come about the way they are. Gender might come into it. Any differences in society, nature, science is another area. You know, if you want to take a scientific approach on some things and they say this is not what the leader says is true, science is going against that, it could be that it is a high control religious group that you're going to get yourself into. Number four, this can happen with the children of parents that get into high control groups, and that is you tend to have no hope outside, no will of your own, no hope or faith in yourself outside of their group. I've had some personal experience with that. I was raised in this sort of environment, and what will happen is, and you may think, well, this is great, you know, my kids are learning nice religious stories, you know, myths that are handed down to teach us lessons, or my kids are going to have all these benefits. I mean, they're going to have friends that, you know, they can play with and maybe keep them out of trouble off the streets on Sunday morning or Saturday night at youth groups or whatever. But the problem is the child could, and in my case it's true, begin to not have any hope or faith or even a sense of their own, I was going to say agency, but it's not just that, but you know, they could develop this view that when you're in the group and you stay within this thinking, their worldview, then you don't need to prepare for things like your retirement. You don't need to train outside of their religious context to do a job because, well, let's face it. I'm talking about a Christian fundamentalist type of group here in my experience, but it can happen in other religious groups. And basically, they want to keep everything. They want to keep science. They want to keep medicine and all these things under their umbrella of their beliefs. Now, sometimes this can, and I'm not saying science is always correct. In fact, science isn't meant to be correct. It's always meant to be correcting itself. But articles of faith, they don't necessarily correct themselves. They're considered revelation, something handed down on tablets or scribbled on stone or just given to somebody in their head and it's written down on parchment. And these are rules and ways of life that you're to follow without question, because the person who wrote them down claims to have this special authority and a special connection with the divine. So what will happen with kids raised in this environment, and you may be thinking you're doing them a great favor, but they won't, in an extreme sense, a lot of them won't even go out into the world and develop their own, take on the world on their own and become what they want to become in life. Because you want, okay, I can give you an example. You know, in the child's mind, they may want to be a doctor, just as a doctor, and help people. But being raised in the religious context and being taught that the mission of that religion or that faith is to perpetuate itself, to go out and make new disciples, well then, if that's the greatest thing you can do, if that's the biggest goal that a human being can have, is to make more disciples, in this particular religion's case, to save, to you know, spread the gospel of doctrine so others can be saved from whatever, you know, eternal torment, whatever their doctrine says, even though there may not be evidence for this, no scientific observation. We're just told maybe somebody came back from the dead and saw that it was true, therefore it's true. Yeah, children will get themselves isolated from the world, and it can affect, and when they grow up, it can affect how they prepare for their life, because in a personal note, a family member of mine, which I have mentioned before on this channel, I am convinced that person, and all, even though that this family member of mine got quite lucky in life, they believe that the second coming, that Jesus, the head of their religion, the second person of the Trinity, God incarnate, on earth. These are all religious terms you get to learn in particular Christian branches. That at any moment that God is going to stop all the wars, he's going to stop the diseases, and he's going to appear in the heavens, or maybe the interpretation is that true war is going to begin when he comes back. So if you have this, if you're a child from a young age and you have this in the back of your mind, that there's really nothing more important in life than this mission, then no matter what you do, if you're going to be a filmmaker, it has to be, we'll say in this case, a Christian filmmaker. If you're going to be a doctor, you've got to be a missionary. You've got to be out there somewhere. And a lot of people will push back and say, no, I'm a doctor and a Christian, or I'm a healer or whatever, a teacher, and I'm not over in some other country. But if you really are raised to believe and take it very, very deeply and very, very seriously, you can get into this cult-like thinking where it's up to you to save the world, and your purpose in life is to spread this message, and that's your fundamental purpose. And in return, just like the group rewarding you, your invisible God is going to make sure that he's going to look after you. And it doesn't matter how good your job, your career that you try to train for, or doesn't matter about maybe how much you saved up for retirement. In the end, he's going to look after you. You're always going to have a food on your table and roof over your head, because he wouldn't do that to you because he loves you. Now, I'm being a little more elaborate here because I know I personally experienced this, and it's a dangerous way to think. Instead of just popping out into the world and getting on your feet when you're 18 years old and saying, it's my turn to take on the world and to do it my way and to learn. And what I mean by my way is to just go to get a valid education, to train, to do whatever it is you're to do, without thinking it's your mission to do some spiritual thing in the world. Yeah, I guess maybe it's very hard to define, and we won't go any more further into this into it in this film. So it can actually take hope away from yourself, faith in yourself, and you get kind of isolated from the mainstream world. You can't listen to certain kinds of music. You can't watch certain movies. And it'll all seem very valid. The reasons will seem very valid that's given. So children of these kind of high control religious groups often suffer in the world. They often do, because they can't get on, because they're thinking so much about heavenly things afterwards that they're not even focusing on, because when you're told that one thing is so important, you don't even bother to think about the other normal things. So you grow up never really knowing how to put yourself first. And so this does confuse, as I said, it confuses you. It confuses your choice for who you love. You're going to have certain parameters on that, let's just talk gender. You can't love outside your, like within your gender, whatever the teachings of this group says. That's another sign that they're controlling you. Because your love will have to be placed, your career, your interests, your money. It's all going to go to what they think is best. So number 6, I've got a little bonus one here, and it says basically there's going to be a conflict between guilt versus motivation. Your motivation for doing things won't basically be for yourself and others, for you and your family. Yes, it's true. But you're going to have this sort of for God and God's kingdom first. And the thing about that is that the group is going to tell you what God and God's kingdom wants from you. And so that is going to always cause, and it's sort of similar to what I said, to be pursuing that first and above all things, pardon me. I found too, as I grew up, that I got to the point where I was overthinking everything, whether, you know, if you should even, everything you do, because you're taught that this spiritual element, the spiritual being, this deity that you've never seen, but that you have all faith in, that's saving you from eternal damnation, or actually bringing you into his presence, his glorious presence someday. And, you know, hark the herald angels sing and all that. You're just going to find that you overthink everything. And this is part of the problem, is that you can't do anything because you're like, you're going to go through this sort of mental checklist. Well, does God, does the person who speaks for God, does this body of believers who speak for God, does this align with what they are saying? If I want to do this or I want to do that, and it's not necessarily big life choices. See, this is what I'm trying to say. It's like what you might just do for a pastime. It might just be you pulling into a parking space and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't park there because I just saw an older lady that would rather have that parking lot. So I hope you see what I'm saying, you know, because you're always looking, you're scanning, you're thinking, what can I do good that's going to please what I believe, and it's coming from this high control group. But you're going to always think you're doing it for an invisible spiritual being, or to get love from this person. But remember, it's always going to be filtered. So I guess that's all I have to say today. Watch out for those 5 or 6 things. As you go through life, yeah, we do look for help, and we do look for counseling. But be careful when you're going into groups that claim they know all the answers, and you got to follow those answers, and that's the way you're going to get your love and your sense. What I mean by love, I should be a little more definitive there before I go. I mean acceptance in a group. I mean singing together in harmony. I mean being a part of liturgical things, religious practices. And it'll make you feel like you really fit in, and it'll make you feel wonderful and warm. But dare you disagree with anything, and you're going to find it's a different world. So that's my advice for staying away from high control interest groups. That's it for today, and we'll see you in another video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to. Bye.